Good morning, Alpine. Welcome to this Friday edition of Alpine Daily. Today I want to talk about the Jesus tax, and I'm going to be talking about Matthew 22. This is the passage we spoke on Sunday, and you might remember this is when the Herodians and the Pharisees are coming to Jesus and they're trying to trap him. They come to him with a tax question and they're trying to get him in trouble. So let's see what goes on in this passage. So they come to Jesus and they say, "Tell us then, what is your opinion? Is it right to pay the imperial tax to Caesar or not?" But Jesus, knowing their evil intent, said, "You hypocrites, why are you trying to trap me? Show me the coin used for paying the tax." They brought him a denarius, and he asked them, "Whose image is this, and whose inscription?" "Caesar's," they replied. Then he said to them, "So give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's." On Sunday, we talked about this passage and explained how this shows that government has some authority, some rightful authority in our lives. But today I want to look at this passage in a different way. Let's look at that last phrase, give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. What is he talking about here when he says give back to Caesar what is Caesar's? He's talking about this coin, this tax that they're asking about. And how does he say give it back to Caesar because it belongs to Caesar? Well, because he says, look, this has Caesar's image on it and Caesar's inscription. And because of the image and the inscription on it, it belongs to Caesar. So then he says, give back to God what is God's. Well, what is it that is God's? Do we owe a tax to God? Is there a Jesus tax? Is there a coin out there with Jesus's image somewhere on it? Let's think about that. In the same way that this coin was owed to Caesar because it was imprinted with Caesar's image, that would mean that our very lives are owed to God because we are imprinted with God's image. Where do I get that from? That goes all the way back to Genesis 1. Remember, right after God has created everything else, then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over everything we've just created." So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. So when God created man, this is the first time that he placed his image on something. Nothing else in creation had God's image, but then God created mankind and he placed his image on them. And ever since then, man has had God's image imprinted on him. Each one of us have God's image imprinted on our lives. So when we say that the coin is owed to Caesar because it has Caesar's image on it, then we have to logically think that is what Jesus was talking about when he said, what is God's? Our lives have God's imprint. Our lives have God's image. So we owe God our very life. Well, what does that even mean? How do we give our lives to God? If we want to give our lives to God, one way that we talk about that at Alpine is we say, find out what pleases God and do it. This is the first principle in our Foundations 201 booklet. And this simply means find out what makes God happy. How can we live in a way that would make God happy? And once we know those things that please God, do them. Be obedient and walk in obedience. So today for your prayer focus, I just challenge you to consider if there's areas today that you haven't been obedient to God, that you're not giving back to God, that you're not glorifying God with your life, and surrender those to him today. Be willing to give up those areas to him today so that your life might be a gift back to God because of the image that God has placed in your life.